Well, it can be so easy to just get too carried away. But welcome into the live, everybody. Because of the constraints of time today, I'm going to be reading the book. I'm going to be finishing the reading of the book. Oh, this is loud. So, due to the time constraints that we have going against us today, we are going to be finishing the reading of the book Taken at the Flood. And guys, I really have to tell you all, I sincerely appreciate you all. And just like a few months ago when I was reading a novel every day, I noticed that there have been lots of people, lots more people coming in, and there have been lots more views and likes whenever I read. That seems to be a nice little niche for me. So we're going to be reading more and more and more. And people don't so much come in for the reading of the Bible. Sometimes for the reading of the Bible, there are like 12 people, 20 people. Like, what in the world? I would say to y'all need to listen to the reading of the Bible because it influences all your lives. So if I were you, I would come into to the reading of the Bible as much as I come in to the reading of the novels. And I've noticed that when I read a novel, in by the time I finish reading it, I have like 50, 60 likes, and people do come back to listen to the reading of the novels. And I appreciate you all. I thank you all. So we're gonna finish the reading of this book today. Yeah, we have just a few more chapters to go. So let us begin. Those of you who were here yesterday would have heard me read, I mean, last night, would have heard me read about how this book is so mysterious. We read about how the detective were still having trouble determining who was the real killer. They had arrested David Hunter. They had arrested David Hunter, believing that he was the last person to have seen the murdered man alive. The murdered man, who had checked in as Enoch Arden, was suspected to have been Robert Underhay, and then they now discovered that he was really Charles Roden. That was his name. Yeah, it was Charles Wooten. He was really Charles Wooten. And now they are still enveloped in the mist of confusion because there was a liquid in the room. Now they're thinking there was a woman there. The old lady said that she saw, Miss Ledbetter said, she saw a woman coming out of the room wearing an orange scarf, and she is sure she heard a man's voice, which sort of turns the story around to the other side because now they're thinking whether there was a woman in the room and whether a woman could have been responsible for the murder. But who was that woman? Was that woman one of the clouds? Was that woman? Who was it? Who was there? Because there is such a big plot amongst the Cloud family members to get to get the money of Gordon Cloud that they would do just about anything. Now I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was responsible for all these unfortunate events as they try to spin a narrative and manipulate situations to fit the narrative that Rosalind is not entitled to Gordon Cloud's millions. I don't know what is going on, but we are. God, is that you? Where you was for Bible reading, sis? You know, you was probably asleep. Because I did Bible reading. I finished Bible reading an hour ago. But here we are. Jesus. People who ever wonder why you go to your bed tired. You go to your bed tired. You sleep for 6 hours and you wake up tireder. Mighty God. So let me have to go drink some coffee because I need to stay up. I have a million things to do. I'm gonna have work tonight. I hope I'll be able to take a nap this afternoon. But if not, some coffee gon' keep me going. And if the coffee keep me going tonight, tomorrow morning I'm gonna crash. Oh Lord, I gotta just prepare for it. But anywho, we are going to be finishing the reading of the book Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie. Come with me, guys. Let us read. When Harriet left the police station, he was almost at once accosted by Aunt Katy. She had several shopping bags with her and came up to him with a breathless eagerness of manner. So terrible about poor Major Porter, she said. I can't help feeling that his outlook on life must have been very materialistic. Army life, very narrowing. And though he had spent a good deal of his life in India, I'm afraid he never took advantage of the spiritual opportunities. It would be all poker and choker. It would be all puka and chucha azri and tiffin and pig sticking. I'm not sure what that is. The narrow army round. To think that he might have sat at a chela at the feet of some guru or the missed opportunities. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's my problem. I don't rest, I sleep. Child, please, allow me. Oh my word. Let me continue. Oh, the missed opportunities. Emperiot, how sad they are. Aunt Katy shook her head and relaxed her grip on one of the shopping bags. A depressed looking piece of card slipped out and slithered into the gutter. Periot retrieved it, and in her agitation, Aunt Katy let a second bag slip, whereupon a tin of golden syrup began a gay career rolling along the high street. Thank you so much, Emperiot, Aunt Katy gasped. She grabbed the card. He ran after the golden syrup. Oh, thank you. So clumsy of me. But really, I have been so upset. That unfortunate man. Yes, it is sticky, but really, I don't like to use your clean handkerchief. Well, it's very kind of you. As I was saying, in life, we are in death, and in death, we are in life. I should never be surprised to see the astral body of any of my dear friends who have passed over. One might, just pass them in the street. Why, only the other night I what? You permit? Period rammed the card firmly into the depths of the bag. You were saying? Yes, astral bodies, said Aunt Katy. I asked, for twopence because I only had half pennies. But I thought at the time the face was familiar. Only I couldn't place it. I still can't. But I think now it must be someone who has passed over, perhaps some time ago, so that my remembrance was very uncertain. It is wonderful the way people are sent to one in one's need, even if it's only a matter of pennies for telephones. Oh dear, quite a key of peacocks. They must have got either trifle or Swiss roll. I hope I'm not too late. Mrs. Lionel Cloud plunged across the road and joined herself to the tail end of a queue of grim-faced women outside the confectioner's shop. Perio went on down the high street. He did not turn in at the Stag. Instead, he bent his steps towards the White House. He wanted very much to have a talk with Lynn Marchmont, and he suspected that Lynn Marchmont would not be averse to having a talk with him. It was a lovely morning, One of those summer mornings in spring that have a freshness denied to a real summer's day. Perriot turned off from the road. He saw the footpath leading up past long willows to the hillside above Furrow Bank. Charles Trenton had come that way from the station on the Friday before his death. On his way down the hill, he had met Rosalind Cloud coming up. He had not recognized her, which was not surprising since he was not Robert Underhay, and she, naturally, had not recognized him for the same reason. But she had sworn, when shown the body, that she had never seen that man before. Did she say that for safety's sake, or had she been that day so lost in thought that she had not even glanced at the face of the man she had passed on the footpath? If so, what had she been thinking about? Had she, by any chance, been thinking of Rowley Cloud? Perriot, Perriot turned along the small side road which led to the White House. The garden of the White House was looking very lovely. It held many flowering shrubs, lilacs, and laburnums, and in the center of the lawn was a big old gnarled apple tree. Under it, stretched out in the deck chair, was Lynn Marchmont. She jumped nervously when Perriot, in a formal voice, wished her good morning. You did startle me, Perriot. I didn't hear you coming across the grass. So you are still here in Wormsley Vale? Yes, I am still here. Why? Perriot shrugged his shoulders. It is a pleasant, out of the world spot where one can relax. I relax. I'm glad you are here, said Lynn. You do not say to me like the rest of the family. When do you go back to London, Perriot? And wait anxiously for the answer. Do you want? Do they want you to go back to London? It would seem so, but I don't. Ah, ah, ah. Oh, Miss Priceless, what's up? Miss Priceless, I'm look different with a wig on. Okay, my love. Go ahead. It was a pleasure having you. Never mind. Go ahead, do your thing, my love. I appreciate you. Let us continue. No, I realize that. Why, mademoiselle? Because it means that you are not satisfied. Not satisfied. I mean that David Hunter did it. Ha! So you see, the thing is, oh my Lord, help my soul. So Lynn Marchmont and the others, they want to be happy and comfortable with the quote unquote fact that David Hunter is taking the fall for the death of Claude Claude Wooten. They are glad that he is taking the fall for it. So, oh boy, Charles Trenton, I keep saying Charles Wooten. Charles Trenton is the person that was murdered in flat number 5. Now, Lynn Marchmont and the others, they hatched the plot to have this man murdered and then to say that he was Robert Underhay, so that would mean that Rosalind's marriage to Gordon Cloud would be invalid and they would get their hands on Gordon Cloud's riches. But Perriot is not having it. Perriot is leaving no stones unturned. He is digging up just about everything. And here he's saying that he's continuing to stay in Wormsley Vale. Lynn is wondering why. And she has the audacity to ask the question, are you not satisfied that David Hunter did it? OMG. And you want him so much to be innocent? He saw a faint flush creep up under her bronze skin. Naturally, I don't want to see a man hanged for what he didn't do. Naturally, oh yes. and the police are simply prejudiced against him because he's got their backs up. That's the worst of David. He likes antagonizing people. The people are not so prejudiced as you think. As you think, Miss Marchmont, the prejudice against him was in the minds of the jury. They refused to follow the coroner's guidance. They gave a verdict against him, and so the police had to arrest him. But I may tell you that they are very far from satisfied with the case against him. She said eagerly, then they may let him go, do you think? Perriot shrugged his shoulders. Who do they think did it? Mr. Perriot. Perriot said slowly, there was a woman at the stag that night. Lynn cried, I don't understand anything. When we thought the man was Robert Underhay, it all seemed so simple. Why did Major Porter say it was Underhay if it wasn't? Why did he shoot himself? We are back now where we started. You are the third person to use that phrase. Am I? She looked startled. What are you doing, Mr. Perriot? Talking to people. That is what I do. Just talk to people. But you don't ask them things about the murder. Perriot shook his head. No, well, what shall we say? I just pick up gossip. Does that help? Sometimes it does. You would be surprised how much I know of the everyday life of Wormsley Vale in the last few weeks. I know who walked where and who they met, and sometimes what they said. For instance, I know that the man Arden took the footpath to the village, passing by Furrobank, and asked the way of Mr. Rowley Cloud, and that he had a pack in his back. He had a pack on his back and no luggage. I know that Rosalind Cloud had spent over an hour at the farm with Rowley Cloud and that he had been happy there, unlike her usual self. What? Yes, said Lynn. Rowley told me that. He said she was like someone having an afternoon out. Ha ha! He said that? Harriet paused and went on. Yes, I know a lot of the comings and goings, and I have heard a lot about people's difficulties. Yours and your mother's, for example. There's no secret about any of us, said Lynn. We have all tried to gauge money, to cadge. You remember we came up on that word already? The cadge means to take money from people, to believe that you are entitled to money that you are really not entitled to. So she says, we have all tried to cadge money off Rosalind. That's what you mean, isn't it? I did not say so. Well, it's true. And I suppose you've heard things about me and Rowley and David. But you are going to marry Rowley Cloud, aren't you? Am I? I wish I knew. That's what I was trying to decide that day when David burst out of the woods. It was like a great question mark in my brain. Shall I? Shall I? Shall I? Even the train in the valley seemed to be asking the same question. The smoke made a fine question mark in the sky. Perriot's face took on a curious expression. Lynn misunderstood it. She cried out, Oh, don't you see, Mr. Perriot? It's all so difficult. It isn't a question of David at all. It's me. I've changed. I've been away for 3 or 4 years. Now I've come back. I'm not the same person who went away. That's the tragedy everywhere. People coming home changed, having to readjust themselves. You can't go away and lead a different kind of life and not change. You are wrong, said Perriot. The tragedy of life is that people do not change. She stared at him, shaking her head. He insisted. But yes, it is so. Why did you go away in the first place? Why? I went into the Wrens. I went in service. Oh, yes, yes. But why did you join the Wrens in the first place? You were engaged to be married. You were in love with Rowley Cloud. You could have worked. You could have not. You could have not, as a land girl here in Wormsley Vale. I could have, I suppose, but you wanted to get away. You wanted to get ahead. You wanted to go abroad, to see life. You wanted, perhaps, to get away from Rowley Cloud. And now you are restless. You still want to get away. Oh no, mademoiselle. People do not change. When I was at when I was out east, I longed for home. Yes, yes. Where were you? Welcome into the live, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming in, guys. We are continuing the reading of Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie. I'm still waiting to see who is taken at the flood, but you know that usually comes in at the end of the story. Oh, Love Ice. Love Ice, what's up, my sister? How are you doing, my love? I hope you are working and resting because, the body needs some rest. Where am I? Okay, let me read again. She stared at him, shaking her head. He insisted, "But yes, it is so. Why did you go away in the first place?" "Why? I went into the Wrens. I went on service." "Yes, yes. But why did you join the Wrens in the first place? You were engaged to be married. You were in love with Rowley Cloud. You could have worked, could you not? As a land girl here in Wormsley Vale, I could have, I suppose, but you wanted to get away. You wanted to go abroad. You wanted to see life. You wanted to leave. You wanted, perhaps, to get away from Rowley Cloud. And now you are restless. You still want to get away. Oh no, mademoiselle, people do not change. When I was out east, I longed for home, Lynn cried defensively. Yes, yes. Where you where you are not, there you will want to be. That will always be so. Perhaps with you. That is true. Where you are not, that's where you will always want to be. But where you are is sometimes where you never want to be. Yes, yes. Where you are not, there you will want to be. That will always be so. Perhaps with you. You make a picture to yourself. You see a picture of Lynn Marchmont coming home. But the picture does not come true because the Lynn Marchmont whom you imagine is not the real Lynn Marchmont. She is the Lynn Marchmont you would like to be. Lynn asked bitterly. So, according to you, I shall never be satisfied anywhere? I did not say that. But I do say that when you went away, you were dissatisfied with your engagement, and that now you have come back, you are still dissatisfied with your engagement. Oh Lord, you're still working and tired, tired, tired. Yes, baby, go home, get you some rest. Happy Friday, Jojo. How are you doing, my love? Good to see you. We are finishing up the reading of this book today, so that maybe not tomorrow, but maybe Sunday or so, or maybe tomorrow we can start another book. Lynn broke off a leaf and chewed it meditatively. You're rather a devil at knowing things, aren't you, Mr. Perriott? It is my maitre. Oh, wait, that looks like a French word. My métier, métier. Where's my phone? Wait, I definitely got to see what that word means. Hold on. Metir. Métier.
Métier.
Métier. Okay, that's how it's pronounced. Métier. It is a trade, a profession, or occupation. Those who work honestly at the
Métier.
métier. Okay. Okay, so let us move on. That's what that means. Oh yeah, yeah, it's 7 o'clock and you want to sleep. You are tired. I understand. That's like me when I work the night shift. Girl, I be so tired in the morning. I want to do nothing but sleep. I'll be falling asleep on the live. Like, but it is what it is. I tell you, it is what it is. We just got to do what we got to do. Let us continue. You're rather a devil at knowing things, aren't you, Mr. Perriot? It is my métier, said Perriot modestly. There is a further truth, I think, that you have not yet recognized, Lynn said sharply. You mean David, don't you? You think I'm in love with David? That is for you to say, murmured Perriot discreetly. And I don't know. There's something in David that I'm afraid of, but there's something that draws me too. She was silent a moment and then went on. I was talking yesterday to his brigadier. He came down here when he heard David was arrested to see what he could do. He has been telling me about David, how incredibly daring he was. He said David was one of the bravest people he had ever had under him. And yet, Mr. Perriot, in spite of all he said and his praise, I had the feeling that he wasn't sure, not absolutely sure, that David hadn't done this. And you are not sure either? Lynn gave a crooked, rather pathetic smile. No, you see, I've never trusted David. Can you love someone you don't trust? Unfortunately, yes. I've always been unfair to David because I didn't trust him. I've believed quite a lot of the beastly local gossip, hints that David wasn't David Hunter at all, but just a boyfriend of Rosalind's. I was ashamed when I met the brigadier and he talked to me about having known David as a little boy in Ireland. Cess, Cess Everton. Jesus, my God, murmured Perriot. Now, Perriot, he keeps talking. He keeps talking in French. Let me see what that word means, what that phrase means. Hold on a second, guys. I gotta pause because when I read, I don't just call the words. I gotta read and learn in the process. Let me type in this word and see what it means. CEST epitant. Oh my. Okay. Well, says epitant, translated in English, means it's amazing, or that's fantastic, or this is amazing, that's brilliant. Okay, okay, that's what that Seshapotant meant. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm not French, so I should be forgiven. Says Epatant, murmured Perriot, how people can get hold of the wrong end of a stick. What do you mean? Just what I say. Tell me, did Mrs. Cloud, the doctor's wife, did she ring you up at the night of the murder? Aunt Katie, you mean? Yes, she did. What about? Some incredible muddle she had got into over some accounts. Did she speak from her own house? Why, no. Actually, her telephone was out of order. She had to go out to a call box. At 10 minutes past 10? Thereabouts. Our clocks never keep particularly good time. Thereabout, said Perriot thoughtfully. He went on delicately. That was not the only telephone call you had that evening, was it? No, Lynn spoke shortly. David Hunter rang you up from London, didn't he? Yes, she flared out suddenly. I suppose you want to know what he said. Oh, indeed, I should not presume. You are welcome to know. He said he was going away, clearing out of my life. He said he was no good to me, and that he never would run straight, not even for my sake. And since that was probably true, you did not like it, said Periot. I hope he will go away. That is, if he gets acquitted all right. I hope they'll both go away to America or somewhere. Then perhaps we shall be able to stop thinking about them. We'll learn to stand on our own 2 feet. We'll stop feeling ill will. Ill will? Yes, I felt it first one night at Aunt Katie's. She gave a sort of party. Perhaps it was because I was just back from abroad and rather on edge, but I seemed to feel it in the air, eddying, eddying all around us. Eddying. That means, floating. Eddying all around us. Ill will to her, to Rosalind. Don't you see? We were wishing her dead. All of us wishing her dead. And that's awful. To wish that someone who's never done you any harm may die. Her death, of course, is the only thing that can do you any good. Harriet spoke in a brisk and practical tone. You mean, you mean do us good financially? Her mere being here has done us harm in all the ways that matter. Envying a person, resenting them, cadging off them. It isn't good for one. Now, there she is, at Furrobank all alone. She looks like a ghost. She looks scared to death. She looks as though she's going off her head. And she won't let us help, not one of us. We have all tried. Mums asked her to come and stay with us. Aunt Frances asked her here. Even Aunt Katie went along and offered to be with her at Furrobank. But she won't have anything to do with us now, and I don't blame her. She won't even see Brigadier Conroy. I think she's ill, ill with worry and fright and misery. And we are doing nothing about it because she won't let us. Have you tried? You yourself? Yes, said Lynn. I went up there yesterday. I said, was there anything I could do? She looked at me. Suddenly, she broke off and shivered. I think she hates me. She said, you least of all. David told her, I think, to stop on at Furrobank, and she always does what David tells her to do. Rowley took her up eggs and butter from Longwiller's. I think he's the only one of us she likes. She thanked him and said he had always been so kind. Rowley, of course, is kind. There are people, said Periot, for whom one has great sympathy, great pity, people who have too heavy a burden to bear. For Rosalind Cloud, I have great pity. If I could, I would help her, even now, if she would listen. With sudden resolution, he got to his feet. Come, mademoiselle, he said, let us go up to Furrobank. Why don't they leave Rosalind alone? She don't want to talk to y'all, and y'all hate the guts out of her, all because of her dead husband's money, not because she has done anything wrong to y'all. Come on now, people, just leave the woman alone. It took them only about 5 minutes to reach Furrobank. The drive wound up an incline through carefully masked banks of rhododendrons. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know those plants. Rhododendrons. No trouble or expense had been spared by Gordon Cloud to make Furrobank a show place. The parlour maid who answered the front door looked surprised to see them, and a little doubtful as to whether they could see Mrs. Cloud. Madame, she said, wasn't up yet. However, she ushered them into the drawing room and went upstairs with Periot's message. Periot looked around him. He was contrasting this room with Francis Cloud's drawing room, the latter such an intimate room, so characteristic of its mistress. The drawing room at Furrobank was strictly impersonal, speaking only of wealth tempered by good taste. Gordon Cloud had seen to the latter. Everything in the room was of good quality and of artistic merit, but there was no sign of any selectiveness, no clue to the personal taste of the room's mistress. Rosalind, it seemed, had not stamped upon the place any individuality of her own. She had lived in Furrobank as a foreign visitor might live at the Ritz or at the Savoy. I wonder, thought Periot, if the other. Lynn broke the chain of his thought by asking him of what he was thinking and why he looked so grim. The wages of sin, mademoiselle, are said to be death, but sometimes the wages of sin seem to be luxury. Is that any more endurable, I wonder? To be cut off from one's own home life? To catch, perhaps, a single glimpse of it when the way back to it is barred. He broke off. Desiree, what's up? How are you doing? Good morning to you, my dear sister. Good to see you. He broke off. The parlour maid, her superior manner laid aside, a mere frightened middle-aged woman, came running into the room, stammering and choking with words she could hardly get out. Oh, Miss Merchant, her soul, the mistress of Shears, she's very bad. She doesn't speak, and I can't arouse her, and her hands are so cold. Oh my God, Rosalind is not dead. Stop it. Sharply, Periot turned and ran out of the room. Lynn and the maid came behind him. He raced up to the first floor. The parlour maid indicated the open door facing the head of the stairs. It was a large, beautiful bedroom, the sun pouring in through the open windows, only pale, beautiful rugs. In the big carved bedstead, Rosalind was lying, apparently asleep. Her long, dark lashes lay on her cheeks. Her head turned naturally into the pillow. There was a crumpled up handkerchief in one hand. She looked like a sad child who had cried itself to sleep. Periot picked up her hand and felt her for a pulse. The hand was ice cold and told him what he already guessed. He said quietly to Lynn, "She has been dead for some time. She died in her sleep." "Oh, sir! Oh, what shall we do?" The parlour maid burst out crying. "Who was her doctor?" "Uncle Lionel." Okay. That makes sense. That made sense. Y'all remember, you all remember when when David was leaving, David told her she was to go take the pills that Dr. Lionel Cloud had prescribed for her. Y'all remember that? Hmm. "Uncle Lionel," said Lynn. Periot said to the parlour maid, "Go and telephone to Dr. Cloud right now." She went out of the room, still sobbing. Periot moved here and there around the room. A small white cardboard box beside the bed bore a label, "One powder to be taken at bedtime." Using his handkerchief, he pushed the box open. There were 3 powders left. He moved across the mantelpiece, then to the writing table. The chair in front of it was pushed aside. The blotter was open. A sheet of paper was there, with words scrawled in an ununiform, childish handwriting. "I don't know what to do. I can't go on. I've been so wicked. I must tell someone and get peace. I didn't mean to be so wicked to begin with. down at the dead girl. Then the door was pushed violently open, and David Hunter strode breathlessly into the room. David! Lynn started forward. Have they released you? I'm so glad. He brushed her words aside as he brushed her aside, thrusting her almost roughly out of the way as he bent over the still white figure. Rosa! Rosa! Rosalind! He touched her hand. Then he swung around Lynn, his face blazing with anger. His words came high and deliberate. So you have killed her, have you? You have got rid of her at last. You have got rid of me. Send me to jail on a trumped-up charge, and then, amongst you all, you put her out of the way, all of you, or just one of you. I don't care. Oh wow, I am back, guys. I didn't even realize that phone died. I didn't realize I heard the phone go off. I'm shocked. Shocked that I'm shocked that the phone went off. But anyway, a good thing I had another device. So now I just need, I just need the lights to shine. Almighty Jesus. Hold on there, guys. I need to get this light to shine this way. So that I can continue reading. All right, let us continue reading. So David burst in the room. Oh my gosh, my eyes starting to water. But let us continue. Rosalind, he touched her hand. Then he swung around on Lynn, his face blazing with anger. His words came high and deliberate. So you have killed her, have you? You have gotten rid of her at last. You got rid of me, sent me to jail on a trumped-up charge, and then, amongst you all, you put her out of the way. All of you. Or just one of you. I don't care which it is. You killed her. You wanted the damn money. Now you have got it. Oh my God. Her death gives it all to you, poor David. I wonder if Rosalind made a will. Do you all think Rosalind made a will? I doubt it. She was only 26, so I doubt it. You'll all be out of Queer Street now. You'll all be rich. A lot of dirty, murdering thieves you all are. Oh my gosh. You weren't able to touch her as long as I was As long as I'm stumbling even my mouth. Go and stay safe, love Ice. Be safe, my love. Go home and rest, please, sweetheart. Go home and rest. You need it. You need it. I know we gotta work. We gotta work. We ain't got no choice. Ain't nobody gonna give us anything. And we didn't get an inheritance. Nobody died and left anything for us. So we just got to work. But we gotta rest in between so that we can live to work another day. I knew how to protect my sister. She was never one to be able to protect herself. But when she was alone here, you saw your chance and you all took it. He paused, swayed slightly, and said in a low, quivering voice, "Murderers! You murderers!" Lynn cried out, "No, David! No! You are wrong! None of us would kill her! We wouldn't do such a thing! One of you killed her! One of you killed her, Lynn Marchmont, and you know that as well as I do. I swear we didn't. I swear, David. I swear we did nothing of the kind." The wildness of his gaze softened a little. "Maybe it wasn't you, Lynn. It wasn't, David. I swear it wasn't." Hercules Periot moved a step forward and coughed. David swung around on him. "Oh," he said, "it's you. What are you doing here?" "I think," said Periot, "that your assumptions are a little overdramatic. Why jump to the conclusion that your sister was murdered? You say she wasn't murdered. Do you call this," he indicated the figure on the bed, "a natural death? Rosalind suffered from nerves, yes, but she had no organic weakness. Her heart was sound enough." Oh my God. "Last night," said Periot, "before she went to bed, she sat here writing." David strode past him, bent over the sheet of paper. "Do not touch it," Periot warned him. David drew back his hand and read the words as he stood motionless. He turned his head sharply and looked searchingly at Periot. "Are you suggesting suicide? Why should Rosalind commit suicide?" The voice that answered the question was not Periot's. Superintendent Spence's quiet Oakshire voice spoke from the open doorway. "Supposing that last Tuesday night Mrs. Cloud wasn't in London, but in Wormsley Vale. Suppose she went to see the man who had been blackmailing her. Suppose that in a nervous frenzy she had killed him." David swung around on him. His eyes were hard and angry. "My sister was in London on Tuesday night. She was there in the flat when I got in at 11 o'clock. "Yes," said Spence. "That's your story, Mr. Hunter, and I dare say you'll stick to it. But I'm not obliged to believe in that story, and in any case, isn't it a little bit late?" He gestured towards the bed. "The case will never come to court now." OMG. This book is full of so many twists and turns. And the funny thing is, I've read books that have 1,000 pages, and it's just 1,000 pages that could have been condensed in 200 pages, believe me. Some of it is just unnecessary wording, unnecessary stuff. When I read a book like this with only 250 pages and it is so compact, I feel like I have read something. There is a lot to retain, and there's a lot to the story that keeps you intrigued and makes you want to read the book, even read it again and again. But those writers out there, please stop writing those 1,000-page books. It don't make no sense. They are not textbooks. You don't need to be writing a little novel with 30 pages. With hear me talking about 30 with 1,000 pages. Okay, let me continue. Welcome into the live, guys. We are finishing up the reading of Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie. I'm going to see if I find another Agatha Christie novel. He won't admit it, said Spence, but I think he knows she did it. Sitting in his room at the police station, he looked across the table at Perriott. Funny how it was his alibi we were so careful about checking. We never gave much thought to hers, and yet there's no corroboration at all for her being in the flat in London that night. We have only got his word that she was there. We knew all along that only two people had a motive for doing away with Arden, and they were David Hunter and Rosalind Cloud. I went bald-headed for him and passed her by. Fact is, she seemed such a gentle thing, even a bit half-witted, but I dare say that partly explains it. Very likely David Hunter hustled her up to London for just that reason. He may have realized that she'd lose her head, and he may have known, too, that she's the kind who gets dangerous when they panic. Another funny thing, another funny thing, I have often seen her going about in an orange linen frock. It was a favorite color of hers, orange scarves, a striped orange frock, an orange beret. And yet, even when old Mrs. Ledbetter described a young woman with her head tied up in an orange scarf, I still didn't tumble to it. That it must have been Mrs. Cloud herself. I still think the girl wasn't quite all there, wasn't wholly responsible. The way you describe her as haunting the RC church here sounds as though she was half off her head with remorse and a sense of guilt. She had a sense of guilt, yes, said Perriott. You know why Perriott says that? Because remember when he met Rosalind at the church? She must have attacked Arden in a kind of frenzy. I don't suppose he had the least idea of what was coming to him. He wouldn't be on his guard. He wouldn't be on his guard with a slip of a girl like that. He ruminated for a moment in silence. Then he remarked, there is still one thing I'm not quite clear about. Who got at Porter? You say it wasn't Mistress Jeremy, but but you but you bet it was all the same. No, said Perriott, it was not Mrs. Jeremy. She assured me of that, and I believe her. I have been stupid over that. You see the twist and turn, you can never know who it was who committed the crime. Was it really Rosalind? I doubt it was. I should have known who it was. Major Porter himself told me. He told you? Oh, indirectly, of course. He did not know that he had done so. Well, who was it? Perriott put his head a little a little to the side. Is it permitted, first, that I ask you two questions? The superintendent looked surprised. Ask anything you like. Those sleeping powders in a box by Rosalind's bed, what are they? The superintendent looked more surprised. Oh, those? Oh, they were quite harmless. Bromide. Bromide? Soothing to the nerves. She took one every night. We analyzed them, of course. They were quite all right. Who prescribed them? Bromide. Why bromide? Bromide? Is bromide something humans? Well, the bromide is not something that humans consume. Bromide? Was bromide used in older days as some kind of medicine? A compound of bromine and another element or group, especially a salt containing the anion, an organic compound with bromine. So don't bromide make you crazy? Hold on. Hold on. Let me see. Toxic effects of bromide. Neuropsychiatric disturbances, tremors, gait imbalance, rash, and dermatitis. Could it be that Rosalind was suffering from this neuropsychiatric disturbance? Because remember, the doctor had prescribed that bromide for her, and she had been taking one every night. Could that be what killed her? Studies in humans indicate that the lung may be severely injured by the acute inhalation of methyl bromide. Hmm. All right. All right. Let us continue. I think that's what it was. Let me continue, my friends. Who prescribed them? Dr. Cloud. What did he prescribe? Huh. When did he prescribe them? Oh, some time ago. What poison was it that killed her? Well, we haven't actually got the report yet, but I don't think there's much doubt about it. Morphia and a pretty hefty dose of it. Lord of mercy. Was any morphia found in her possession? Do they mean morphine? Are they saying morphia? Was there any morphia found in her possession? Spence looked curiously at the other man. No. What are you getting at, Mr. Perriott? I will pass now to my second question, said Perriott evasively. David Hunter put through a call from London to Lynn Marchmount at 11:05 p.m. on that Tuesday night. You say you checked upon calls. That was the only outgoing call from the flat in Shepherd's Court. Were there any incoming calls? One at 10:15, also from Wormsley Vale. It was put through from a public call phone. I see. Perriott was silent for a moment or two. What's the big idea, Mr. Perriott? That call was answered? The operator, I mean, got a response from the London number. I see what you mean, said Spence slowly. There must have been something in the flat, and there must have been someone. It couldn't be David Hunter. He was in the train on his way back. It looked then as if it had been Rosalind Cloud, and if so, Rosalind Cloud could have been at the stag a few minutes earlier. What you are getting at, Mr. Perriott, is that the woman in the orange scarf wasn't Rosalind Cloud, and if so, it wasn't Rosalind Cloud who killed Arden. But then, why did she commit suicide? Now, guys, I am wondering, why is it that there are so many people dying in such quick succession? And you know that's what always happens when money is involved. Whenever money is involved, there is always a lot of people dying. People have to get others out of the way so they can get their hands on money. That's why you see people always fighting over deadlift. Hold on, let me see who this calling me. All right, let us continue. And if so, it wasn't Rosalind Cloud who killed Arden. But then, why did she commit suicide? The answer to that, said Perriott, is very simple. She did not commit suicide. Rosalind Cloud was killed. What? She was deliberately and cold-bloodedly murdered. But who killed Arden? We have eliminated David. It was not David. And now you eliminate Rosalind? But dash it all, those two were the only ones with a shadow of motive. Yes, said Perriott. Perriott seems to be the detective here. He is doing more than the detectives themselves. Yes, said Perriott. motive. It was that which has it was that which has led us astray. If A has a motive for killing C and B has a motive for killing D, well, it does not seem to make sense, does it? And A should and A should kill D and B should kill C. Spence groaned. Go easy, Mr. Perriott. Go easy. I don't even begin to understand what you are talking about with your A's and B's and C's. It is complicated, said Perriott. It is very complicated because, you see, you have here two different kinds of crimes, and consequently, you must have two different murderers. Enter first murderer and enter second murderer. Don't quote Shakespeare, groaned Spence. This isn't Elizabethan drama. But yes, it is very Shakespearean. There are there are here all the emotions, the human emotions in which Shakespeare would have reveled, the jealousies, the hates, the swift, passionate actions, and here too is successful opportunism. There is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Someone acted on that, superintendent, to seize opportunity and turn it into one's ends. That has been triumphantly accomplished under your nose, so to speak. Spence rubbed his Spence rubbed his nose irritably. Talk sense, Mr. Perriott, he pleaded. If it's possible, just say what you mean. I will be very clear, clear as the crystal. We have here, have we not, three deaths. You agree to that, do you not? Three people are dead. Spence looked at him curiously. I should certainly say so. You are not going to make me believe that one of the three is still alive. No, no, said Perriott, smiling. They are all dead, dead as a doornail. But how dead are they, and how did they die? Well, how did, how that is, how that is to say, would you clarify their death? Well, as to that, Mr. Perriott, you know my views. One murder and two suicides. I don't think it is one murder and two suicides. If anything, it might be two murders and one suicide. Well, as to that, Mr. Perriott, you know my views. One murder and two suicides. But according to you, the last suicide isn't a suicide at all. It's another murder. According to me, said Perriott, there has been one suicide, one accident, and one murder. Accident? Do you mean Mrs. Cloud poisoned herself by accident? Or do you mean Major Porter's shooting himself was an accident? No, said Perriott. The accident was the death of Charles Trenton, otherwise called Enoch Arden. Accident? The superintendent exploded. Accident? You say that a particularly brutal murder where a man's head is stove in by repeated blows is an accident? Quite unmoved by the superintendent's vigor, Perriott replied calmly, when I say an accident, I mean that there was no intent to kill. No intent to kill? When a man's head is battered in, do you mean that he was attacked by a lunatic? I think that is very clear the truth. Though not quite in the sense you mean it. Mrs. Gordon was the only, what I mean batty woman, I'm not sure what that means. Mrs. Gordon Cloud was the only batty woman in this case. Because my mind on Batty, but I'm sure Batty has a Batty has a formal meaning that does not refer to the glute of a human. Batty means crazy or insane. That's the formal meaning of the word batty. But you all understand why it's funny to me, right? OMG. Let me. Mrs. Gordon Cloud was the only batty woman in this case. I've seen her looking very queer sometimes. Of course, Mrs. Lionel Cloud is a bit batsy in the belfry, but she'd never be violent. Mrs. Jeremy has got her head screwed on the right way if anyone has. By the way, you say that it was Mrs. Jeremy Cloud who bribed Porter. No, I know who it was. As I say, it was Porter himself who gave it away. One simple little remark. Aha! I could kill myself, as you say, all round the town for not noticing it at the time. And then your anonymous ABC lunatic murdered Rosalind Cloud. Spence's voice was more and more skeptical. Perriott shook his head vigorously. By no means. By no means. This is where the first murderer exits and second murderer enters. Quite a different type of crime. This, no heat and no passion. Cold, deliberate murder. And I intend, Superintendent Spence, to see that our murderer is hanged for that murder. He got up as he spoke and moved towards the door. Hi, cried Spence. You have got to give me a few names. You can't leave it like this. In a very little while, yes, I will tell you. But there is something for which I wait. To be exact, a letter from across the sea. Don't talk like a ruddy fortune teller. Hi, Perriott. But but Perriott had slipped away. He went straight across the square and rang the bell of Dr. Cloud's house. Mrs. Cloud came to the door and gave her usual gasp at seeing Perriott. He wasted no time. Madame, I must speak to you. Oh, of course. Do come in. I'm afraid I haven't had much time to sit down, and I haven't had much time to dust, she said. But I want to ask you something. How long has your husband been a morphia addict? Aunt Katy immediately burst into tears. Oh dear, oh dear. I did so hope that nobody would ever know. It began in the war. He was so dreadfully overtired and had such dreadful neuralgia. And since then, he has been trying to lessen the dose. He really has tried. He has, indeed. But that's what makes him so dreadfully irritable sometimes. That is one of the reasons why he has needed money. It's one of the reasons why we are always broke. Oh, that is one of the reasons why he has needed money, isn't it? Is it not? I suppose so. Oh dear, Mr. Perriott, he was promised to go for a cure. I can't say that's crazy. Yes, it is. So they claim that Mrs. Gordon, that Rosalind Cloud was the only batty woman in the case. They claim she was crazy, but all of them were crazy. He had promised to go for a cure. Calm yourself, madame, and answer me one more little question. On the night when you telephoned to Lynn Marchmont, you went out to the call box outside the post, outside the post office, did you not? Did you meet anybody in the square that night? Oh no, Mr. Perriott, not a soul. But I understood you had to borrow twopence. You know, it's a long time this, from twopence, pound, shilling, and pence. But I understand you had to borrow twopence because you had only half pennies. Oh, yes. I had to ask a woman who came out of the box. She gave me 2 pennies for one half penny. What did she look like? The woman? Well, rather actressy, if you know what I mean. An orange scarf round her head. The funny thing was that I'm almost sure I'd met her somewhere. Her face seemed very familiar. She must, I think, have been someone who had passed over. You think she was a ghost? She must have been someone who had passed over. And yet, I couldn't remember where and how I had known her. Thank you, Mrs. Cloud, said Hercule Period. And I think the Period doing more investigative work than the police. I think the police are just sitting down and waiting for him to tell them what he has found. Because he's like a Abashak. He's not letting anything go by. Lynn came out of the house and glanced up at the sky. The sun was getting low. There was no red in the sky, but a rather unnatural glow of light. A still evening with a breathless feel about it. There would be, she thought, a storm later. Well, the time had come now. She couldn't put things off any longer. She must go to Long Willows and tell Rowley. She owed him that at least, to tell him herself, not to choose the easy way of the written word. Her mind was made up, quite made up. She told herself, and yet she felt a curious reluctance. She looked round her and thought, it's goodbye to all this, to my own world, my own way of life. For she had no illusions. Life with David was a gamble, an adventure that was as likely to turn out badly as to turn out well. He himself had warned her the night of the murder over the telephone. And now, a few hours ago, he had said, I meant to go out of your life. I was a fool to think I could leave you behind. We'll go to London and be married by special license. Oh, yes. I'm not going to give you the chance of shilly-shallying around. You have got roots here, roots that hold you down. I've got to pull you up by the roots, he had added. We'll break it to Rowley when you are actually Mrs. David Hunter. Poor devil, it's the best way to break it to him. Lord Jesus, what a piece of wickedness. So Lynn is really going to marry David and not going to tell Rowley? And Rowley has waited for her all these years when she had gone to the war? But to that she did not agree, though she had not said so at the time. No, she must tell Rowley herself. It was so Rowley was going to it was it was to Rowley she was going now. The storm was just starting as Lynn tapped at the door at Long Willows. Rowley opened it and looked astonished to see her. Hello, Lynn. Why didn't you ring up and say you were coming? I might have been out. I want to talk to you, Rowley. He stood aside to let her pass and followed her into the big kitchen. The remains of his supper were on the table. I'm planning to get an aga or an essay put in here, he said. Easier for you. And a new sink. Steel, she interrupted. Oh my God. Here he's fixing up the house for her. He's fixing up the house for the upcoming marriage, not knowing that she's not wanting to marry him at all. She interrupted. Don't make plans, Rowley. You mean because that poor kid isn't buried yet? I suppose this does seem rather heartless, but she never struck me as a particularly happy person. Sickly, I suppose. Never got over that damn air raid. Anyway, there it is. She's dead and in her grave, and oh, the difference to me, or rather to us. Lynn caught her breath. No, Rowley, there isn't any us. That's what I came to tell you. He stared at her. She said quietly, hating my. She said quietly, hating herself, but steadfast in her purpose. I'm going to marry David Hunter, Rowley. Why would she go by herself to tell Rowley that? She not afraid that Rowley takes something and hurt her? She did not know quite what she expected. Protest? Perhaps an angry outburst? but she certainly did not expect Rowley to take it as he did. He stared at her for a minute or two. Then he went across and poked at the stove, turning at last in an almost absent-minded manner. Well, he said, let's get it clear. You are going to marry David Hunter. Why? Because I love him. You love me. No, I did love you when I went away, but it's been 4 years, and I've changed. We have both changed. You are wrong, he said quietly. I haven't changed. Well, perhaps you haven't changed so much. I haven't changed at all. I haven't had much chance to change. I've just gone plodding on here. I haven't dropped I haven't dropped from parachutes or swarmed up cliffs by night, or wound an arm round a man in the darkness and stabbed him. Rowley, I haven't been to the war. I haven't fought. I don't know what war is. I've led a nice, safe life here, down on the farm. Lucky Rowley, but as a husband, you'd be ashamed of me. No, Rowley. Oh no, it isn't that at all. But I tell you, but I tell you it is. He came nearer to her. The blood was welling up in his neck. The veins of his forehead were started to show. Oh my God, that look in his eyes. She had seen it once as she paused. I believe Rolly is going to hurt this woman. I, I feel like Rolly is going to hurt this woman, and I'm afraid to continue reading, but I have to. No, Rowley. Oh no, it isn't that at all. But I tell you it is. He came closer to her. The blood was welling up in his neck. The veins of his forehead were starting to show. That look in his eyes. She had seen it once as she passed the bull in the field, tossing its head, stamping its foot, slowly lowering its head with the great horns, goaded goaded to a full fury, a blind rage. Be quiet, Lynn. You listen to me for a change. I've missed what I ought to have had. I've missed my chance of fighting for my country. I've seen my best friend go to war and be killed. I've seen my girl, dress up in uniform and go overseas. I've been just the man she left behind. My life's been hell. Don't you understand, Lynn? It's been hell. And then you came back. And since then, it's been worse hell. Ever since that night at Aunt Katie's when I saw you looking at David Hunter across the table. But he's not going to have you, Lynn. Do you hear me? If you are not for me, then no one shall have you. What do you think I am? Rowley, Rowley. She had risen, was retreating a step at a time. She was terrified. This man was not a man any longer. He was a brutish beast. Have killed 2 people, said Rowley Cloud. Do you think I shall stick at killing a third? Oh my God. Rowley! Rowley! He was upon her now, his hands around her throat. I can't hear any more. I can't bear this, Lynn. I cannot bear this. The hands tightened around her neck. The room whirled, blackness, spinning blackness, suffocation, everything going dark. And then suddenly, a cough, a prim, slightly artificial cough. Rowley paused. His hands relaxed, fell to his side. Lynn, released, sank in a crumpled heap on the floor. Just inside the door, Hercules Period stood apologetically coughing. I hope, he said, that I did not intrude. I knocked. Yes, indeed, I knocked, but no one answered. I suppose you were busy. For a moment the air was tense, electric. Rowley stared. It looked it looked for a moment as though he might fling himself on Hercules' Period, but finally he turned away. He said in a flat, empty voice, You turned up just in the nick of time. So guys, you see, it was Rowley Cloud. Who had who had killed the other people? Oh my lord. Into an atmosphere quivering with danger, Hercules' Period brought his own atmosphere of deliberate anticlimax. The kettle, it is boiling. Oh Jesus. The kettle, it is boiling, he inquired. Rowley said heavily, stupidly, yes, it's boiling. Who is this? Hold on, there, guys. Hello? Hello? These people like to interfere with me, you know. Let me put some lipstick on. Oh, no, no lipstick today. That's why I'm not showing my face. No lipstick today. Now I'm gonna finish reading. Our time now after 8. I gotta finish reading. I got to leave here by at least 10 o'clock. I gotta finish reading this, get myself together, and be out the door. Let's start this again. Into an atmosphere quivering with danger, Hercules' Period brought his own atmosphere of deliberate anticlimax. The kettle, it is boiling? He inquired. Rowley said heavily, stupidly, yes, it's boiling. Then you will perhaps make some coffee or some tea if it's easier. Like an automaton, Rowley obeyed. Hercule Period took a large clean handkerchief from his pocket. He soaked it in cold water, wrung it out, and came to Lynn. There, mademoiselle, if you fasten that round your throat. No, if you fasten that round your throat. So, yes, I have the safety pin. There, that will at once ease the pain. Croaking hoarsely, Lynn thanked him. The kitchen at Long Willow's, Period fussing about, it all had for her the quality of a nightmare. But me not understand why she not get up and run. Why does Period not want to run and leave? Seeing that Rowley is a murderer, she felt horribly ill, and her throat was paining her really badly. She staggered to her feet, and Period guided her gently to a chair and put her into it. There, he said, and over his shoulder, the coffee? He demanded. It's ready, said Rowley. He brought it. Period poured out a cup and took it to Lynn. Look here, said Rowley. I don't think you understand. I tried to strangle Lynn. Tisha, said Period in a vexed voice. He seemed to be deploring a lapse of bad taste on Rowley's part. 2 deaths I've got on my conscience, said Rowley. Hers would have been the third if you hadn't arrived. Let us drink up our coffee, said Period, and not talk of debts. It is not agreeable for Mademoiselle Lynn. My God, said Rowley. He stared at Period. Lynn sipped her coffee. This is so strange. Isn't it strange, guys? Somebody just tried to murder you and you sit there drinking their coffee? This part I don't like. Lynn sipped her coffee with difficulty. It was hot and strong. Presently, she felt her throat less painful, and the stimulant began to act. I wonder if Period is planning to take out Rowley himself. There, that is better. Better, yes, said Period. She nodded. Now we can talk, said Period. When I say that, I mean really that I shall talk. How much do you know? Said Rowley heavily. Do you know that I killed Charles Trenton? Yes, said Period. I have known that for some time. The door burst open. It was David Hunter. Lynn, he cried. You never told me. He stopped, puzzled, his eyes going from one to the other. What's the matter with your throat? Another cup, said Periot. Rowley took one from the dresser. Periot received it, filled it with coffee, and handed it to David. Once more, Periot demanded that he dominate the situation. Sit down, he said to David. We will sit here and drink coffee, and you shall all three listen to Hercule Periot while he gives you a lecture on crime. She crazier than him, exactly, Cad. She is crazier than him, because I would have gone out that door so fast. You sitting there talking about you drinking coffee from the man who just tried to strangle you, and here he is saying to Period that I just tried to strangle Lynn. He's dead serious. He looked round on them and nodded his head. Lynn thought, this is some fantastic nightmare. It isn't real. They were all, it seemed, under the sway of this absurd little man with the big mustaches. They sat there obediently. Rowley, the killer, she, his victim, David, the man who loved her, all holding coffee cups, listening to this little man who in some strange way dominated them all. What causes crime? Hercule Periot demanded rhetorically. It is a question that what stimulus is needed? What inbred predisposition does there have to be? Is everyone capable of crime, of some crime? And what happens? That is what I have asked myself from the beginning. What happens when people who have been protected from real life, from its assaults and ravages, are suddenly deprived of that protection? I am speaking, you see, of the clouds. There is only one cloud here, and so I can speak very freely. From the beginning, the problem has fascinated me. Here is a whole family whom circumstances have prevented from ever having had to stand on their own 2 feet. Though each one of the family had a life of his or her own, a profession, yet really they have never escaped from the shadow of a beneficent protection. They have had, always, freedom from fear. They have lived in security. Oh, hold on then. You know, see me don't talk and they saw ya. And they saw that they read and I realize me still have the phone on mute. Oh, me still have the live on mute. Oh Lord Jesus. Oh Lord, let me continue. I am speaking, you see, of the clouds. There's only one cloud here, and so I can speak very freely. From the beginning, the problem has fascinated me. Here is a whole family whom circumstances have prevented from ever having had to stand on their own 2 feet. You see what he's saying? Do you all understand what Period is saying here? Anybody can become a criminal. It all depends because look at the clouds. All of them, they were so privileged. They never had to worry about their security, never had to worry about money. They never had those worries because they were always financially secure. Now, with the absence of that money, they realize that they have been stripped of that security. And with them having been stripped of that security, they have turned to crime. So they are now just like common criminals, plotting people's death and deliberately taking people's lives and doing all that they can do just to get their hands back on the money. Though each one of the family had a life of his or her own, a profession, yet really they had never escaped from the shadow of a beneficent protection. They have had always freedom from fear. They have listened and lived in security, and a security which was unnatural and artificial. Gordon Cloud was always there behind them. What I say to you is this: there is no telling what a human character is until the test comes. To most of us, the test comes early in life. A man is confronted quite soon with the necessity to stand on his own 2 feet, to face dangers and difficulties, and to take his own line of dealing with them. It may be the straight way, it may be the crooked way. Whichever it is, a man usually learns early just what he is made of. But the clouds had no opportunity, but the clouds had no opportunity of knowing their own weaknesses until the time when they were suddenly of protection, when they were suddenly shorn of protection and were forced, quite unprepared, to face difficulty. One thing, and one thing only, stood between them and the resumption of security: the life of Rosalind Cloud. I am quite certain in my own mind that every single one of the Clouds thought at one time or other, if Rosalind was to die. Lynn shivered. Period paused, letting the words sink in, then went on. The thought of death, her death, passed through every mind. Of that I am certain. Did the further thought of murder pass through also? And did the thought in one particular instance go beyond thinking and become action? Without a chance of Without a change of voice, he turned to Rowley. Did you think of killing her? Yes, said Rowley. It was the day she came to the farm. There was no one else there. I thought then I could kill her quite easily. She looked pathetic and very pretty, like the calves I'd sent to the market. You can see how pathetic they are, but you send them off just the same. I wondered, really, that she wasn't afraid. She wouldn't have been, would she? If she had known what was in my mind. Yes, it was in my mind when I took the lighter from her to light her cigarette. She left it behind, I suppose. That's how you got a hold of it. Rowley nodded. I don't know why I didn't kill her, he said wonderingly. I thought of it. One could have faked it up as an accident or something. It was not your type of crime, said Periot. That is the answer. The man you did kill, you killed in a rage, and you did not really mean to kill him, I fancy. Good Lord, no. I hit him on the jaw. He went over backwards and hit his head on the marble fender. I couldn't believe it when I found he was dead. Then suddenly he shot a startled glance at Periot. How did you know that? I think, said Periot, that I have reconstructed your actions fairly accurately. Now, you know how Periot know that, guys. You remember when Periot had snuck into room number 5 where Enoch Arden had died? Remember, he had examined the room, and even though the carpet was gone to the cleaners, he had wiped his fingers on the edge of one of the furniture or something, and he said that it came back black. You remember? He spit on his finger, wiped it on the edge, and it came back black. He spit on his other hand, on his other another finger, wiped on the edge of something else, and it came back clean. So the one that came back black, that was blood on his fingers, where the man had fallen back and hit his head. You shall tell me if I am wrong. You went to the stag, did you not? And Beatrice Lippincott told you about the conversation she had overheard. Thereupon you went, as you have said, to your uncle's Jeremy Cloud to get his opinion as a solicitor upon the position. Now something happened there, something that made you change your mind about consulting him. I think I know what that something was. You saw a photograph. Rowley nodded. Yes, it was on the desk. I suddenly realized the likeness. I realized, too, why the fellow's face had seemed so familiar. I tumbled to it that Jeremy and Francis were getting some relation of hers to put up a stunt and get money out of Rosalind. It made me see red. I went headlong back to the stag and up to number 5 and accused the fellow of being a fraud. He laughed and admitted it, said David Hunter was going to come across all right with the money that very evening. I just saw red when I realized that my own family was, as I saw it, double crossing me. I called him a swine and I hit him. He went down as I said. There was a pause, Herriot said, and then it was the lighter, said Rowley slowly. It fell out of my pocket. I've been carrying it about, meaning to give it back to Rosalind. When I saw her, it fell down on the body, and I saw the initials DH. It was David's, not hers. Ever since that party at Aunt Katie's, I had realized, well, never mind all that. I have thought sometimes I'm going mad. Perhaps I'm a bit mad. Maybe he has gone batty. First Johnny going, and then the war. I, I can't talk about things. I can't talk about things, but sometimes I'll feel blind with rage. And now Lynn and this fellow. I dragged the dead man into the middle of the room and turned him over on his face. Then I picked up those heavy steel tongs. Well, I won't go into details. I wiped off my fingerprints, cleaned up the marble curb. Then I deliberately put the hands of the rich watch at 10 minutes past 9 and smashed it. I took away his ration book and his papers. I thought his identity might be traced through them. Then I got out. It seems to me that Beatrice's story of what she had overheard David would be for it all right. Thanks, said David. And then, said Periot, you came to me. It was a pretty little comedy that you played there, wasn't it? was it not? Asking me to produce some witness that knew Underhay. It was already clear to me that Jeremy Cloud had repeated to his family the story that Major Porter had told. For nearly 2 years, all the family had cherished a secret hope that Underhay might turn up. That wish influenced Mistress Lionel Cloud in her manipulation of the Ouija board, unconsciously, but it was a very revealing incident. Eh bien, I perform my conjuring trick. I flatter myself that I impress you, and really it is I who am completely mug. Yes, and there is Major Porter's room, he says, after he offers me a cigarette. He says to you, you don't, do you? How did he know that you did not smoke? He is supposed he is supposed only that moment to have met you. Imbecile, imbecile that I am. I should have seen the truth then, that already you and Major Porter, you had made your little arrangement together. No wonder he was nervous that morning. Yes, I am to be the mug. I am to bring Major Porter down to identify the body, but I do not go on being the mug forever. No, I am not the mug now, am I? He looked around angrily, then went on. But then Major Porter went back on that arrangement. He does not care to be a witness upon oath in a murder trial, and the strength of the case against David Hunter depends very largely upon the identity of the dead man. So Major Porter backs out. He wrote me he wouldn't go through with it, said Rowley thickly. The damn fool. Didn't he see we had gone too far to stop? I came up to try to drive some sense into him. It was too late. He had said he'd rather shoot himself than perjure himself when it was a question of murder. The front door wasn't locked. I went up and found him. I can't tell you what I felt like. It was as though I was a murderer twice over. If he had only waited, if he had only let me talk to him. There was a note there, was there? Was there? Asked Periot. You took it away? Yes, I was in for things now. Might as well go the whole hog. The note was to the coroner. It simply said that he had given perjured evidence at the inquest. The dead man was not Robert Underhay. I took the note away and destroyed it. Rowley struck his fist on the table. It was like a bad dream, a horrible nightmare. I'd begun this thing, and I'd got to go on with it. I wanted the money to get Lynn, and I wanted Hunter to hang. And then I couldn't understand it. The case against him broke down. Some story about a woman who was with Arden later. I couldn't understand. I still can't understand. What woman? How could a woman be in there talking to Arden after he was dead? There was no woman, said Periot. But Periot, Lynn croaked, that old woman, she saw her, she heard her. Ha ha, said Periot. But what did she see? And what did she hear? She saw someone in trousers with a light tweed coat. She saw a head completely enveloped in an orange scarf, arranged turban-wise, and a face covered with makeup and a lipsticked mouth. She saw that in a dim light. And what did she hear? She saw the hussy draw back into number 5, and from within the room she heard a man's voice saying, "Get out of here, my girl." Bien. It was a man she saw and a man she heard, but it was a very ingenious idea, Mr. Hunter, Periot added, turning placidly to David. What do you mean? David asked sharply. It is now to you that I will tell a story. You come along to the Stag at 9 o'clock or thereabouts. You came not to murder, but to pay. What do you find? You find the man who had been blackmailing you lying on the floor, murdered in a particularly brutal manner. You can think fast, Mr. Hunter, and you realize at once that you are in imminent danger. You have not been seen entering the stag by anyone as far as you know, and your first idea is to clear out as soon as possible, catch the 9:20 train back to London, and swear hard that you have not been near Wormsley Vale. To catch the train, your only chance is to run across country. In doing so, you run unexpectedly into Mrs. Marchmont, and you also realize that you cannot catch the train. You see the smoke of it in the valley. She too, although you do not know it, has seen the smoke, but she has not consciously realized that it indicates that you cannot catch the train. And when you tell her that the time is 9:15, she accepts your statement without any doubt. To impress on her mind that that you did catch the train, you invent a very ingenious scheme. In fact, you now have you now have to plan an entirely new scheme to divert suspicion from yourself. You go back to Furrobank, letting yourself in quietly with your key, and you help yourself to a scarf of your sister's. You take one of her lipstick, and you also proceed to make up your face in a highly theatrical manner. David turned a drug queen. You return to the stag at a suitable time, impress yourself, impress your personality on the old lady who sits in the resident's only room, and whose peculiarities are common gossip at the stag. Then you go on into number 5. When you hear her coming to bed, you came out into the passage, then withdraw hurriedly inside again, and proceed to say loudly, "You had better get out of here, my girl." Period. Paused. "A very ingenious performance," he observed. "Is that true, David?" "Is that really true?" cried Lynn. "Is it true?" David was grinning broadly. "I think a good deal of myself as a female impersonator. Lord, you should have seen that old Gorgon's face." The old Gorgon, only Ninja Man never hear call himself Gorgon. You should have seen that old Gorgon's face. "But how could you be here at 10 o'clock and yet telephone to me from London at 11? David Hunter bowed to Periot. "All explanations by Hercules Periot," he remarked, "the man who knows everything." "How did I do it?" "Very simple," said Periot. "You rang up your sister at the flat from the public call box and gave her certain precise instructions. At 11:04 exactly, she put through a toll call to Wormsley Vale 34. When Miss Marchmont came to the phone, the operator verified the number, then saying no doubt a call from London, or go ahead London, something of that kind. Well, you all remember that that's what was said when Lynn answered the phone? Hmm. Rosalind Cloud then replaced the receiver. You, Periot, turned to David, carefully noting the time. Detailed, he dialed 34, got it, pressed button A, said London wants you, in a slightly disguised voice, and then spoke. The lapse of a minute or two would be nothing strange in a telephone call these days, and would only strike Miss Marchmont as a reconnection. Lynn said quietly, "So that's why you rang me up, David." Something in her tone, quiet as it was, made David look at her sharply. He turned to Periot and made a gesture of surrender. "No doubt about it. You do know everything. To tell the truth, I was scared stiff. I had to think of something. After I had rung Lynn, I walked 5 miles to Dalsby and went up to London by the early milk train, slipped into the flat in time to ripple the bed and have breakfast with Rosalind. It never entered my head that the police would think she had done it. I don't know if I should stop or if I should continue. I don't know if I should stop or if I should continue. But I'm going to pause. I am going to pause right here, and either later or tomorrow I'm going to come back and finish reading it. Yeah, I feel a little stifled right now. So I'm going to end it right there and then come back and finish reading it tomorrow because it has already gone for just about 2 hours. And it is now minutes to 9. And I got to get cracking. So we will come back later or tomorrow and finish the reading of the book. I'm sorry, Taken at the Flood. Now that's going to be it for the reading this morning, my friends. Until next time when I come back to do some more reading, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. Joseph and AG and Todd and then some Desreen and everybody else in the chat. I will see you all later.